Rasmus Sandin gets signed to a 5-year extension by the Capitals, and what is the likelihood that Evgeny Kuznetsov gets dealt on the trade deadline? I'll discuss next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the Sirius XM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. I would love to talk Capitals hockey with you one-on-one, and we can do that on subtext. Just check the show description for more details. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the big move today as Rasmus Sandin gets signed to a 5-year extension by the Capitals, taking care of the Capitals' blue line present and the future. A big move for the Capitals and Sandin. We'll talk about that in the show. A little bit later, we will talk about what is the likelihood of Evgeny Kuznetsov getting dealt at the trade deadline. We know what happened last weekend. He got waived. He cleared waivers and then showed up to Bears practice on Tuesday. But what is the likelihood that he plays for the Bears, and what is the likelihood that he gets dealt before the deadline or on the deadline? We'll talk about that in the show. And then we'll talk about how Ivan Miroshnichenko will be in versus the Penguins. But just to get it going here, this is an interesting time of year in the NHL as there's a lot of movement. And if you've been paying attention to the big name beat writers and the big name insiders inside the NHL, there has been a lot of movement around the NHL today. Players going here, going there, and you're going to see a lot more of that happen between now and Friday. The big move that happened for the Capitals, of course, we know, is that Anthony Mantha got sent out to the Golden Knights. In return, the Capitals got some draft picks. So that was a big move for Vegas and for the Capitals. But the big news today was that Rasmus Sandin got signed to a 5-year extension as a foundational piece of the Capitals blue line, not just in the future, but also the present. I think a building block that the Capitals can build on. So a big day for Rasmus and the Capitals. The Capitals are going through a much needed change, whether they're ready for it or not. This team is getting younger based on necessity. This team is aging out gradually. So it's great to hear that GM Brian McClellan has his eyes on the future. If you take a look at the teams that are in it right now, I'm going to say that in it in quotes, some of the teams are out of it and they don't realize yet. I guess you could almost put the Capitals in that, even though they are not mathematically eliminated, but the Capitals have their eyes set to the future. And he helped doing that by locking up a blue liner Rasmus Sandin to a 5-year contract extension worth $23 million. So he will be handsomely paid to be playing on the Capitals blue line for at least the next 5 years. He said that he doesn't want to just play for the Capitals for 5 years. He would like to play here much longer. So that's an encouraging sign. He's one of 3 players signed through 2029, joining Tom Wilson and Alexei Protas. Sandin was picked up last year around the trade deadline and figures to be a part of the Capitals' present, of course, and, well, the future. And that is what you're looking for, and especially for a team that's not necessarily getting the season that they were looking for. There's been highs, there's been lows, but it seems like this team is puttering out as we head towards the finish line. Can they turn it on? They got a big game Thursday night against the Penguins, a bitter rival. Again, it's going to be an uphill battle for the Capitals to make it to the playoffs. A long shot, a Hail Mary pass that I'm not so sure is going to connect with a receiver, but they are still technically in it. But if we take a look at Sandin and his season thus far, he got off to a slow start, but appears now to be firing on all cylinders. Now has 20 points in 53 games. So I think he's hitting his stride towards the end of the season. Sometimes these guys start a little bit slower, but I mean, to be fair, it's been a pretty good chunk of the season, but he does appear to be engaged right now. Sandin says, I love this organization and just living here. It's something you've been dreaming about and hoping for, but you never really thought it was going to happen. And you take a look at it, he is a part of the future. And why do I say that? At 23 years old, I think he is an important defensive player for the Capitals to build around. You could also put Martin Faravari in there, and to a certain extent, Ethan Bear, depending on how he materializes, not to mention the other talent that the Capitals have in Hershey and lower leagues as well. It all started a year ago when I got here, and the organization really showed a belief in me and gave me a big opportunity. I love it here. Hard to believe still that it's done, Sandin said. He played a key role in the Caps blue line and is taking on a top 4 role. So he is, gaining in popularity just based on how great he's playing. And when I say popularity, I mean time on ice, responsibility, that Spencer Carberry and Mitch Love and the coaches have faith in him, that he is going to go out there and execute, and does a really good job doing it. He is a defenseman that has an offensive flair, and he is a modern day blue liner. You take a look at the old days when they were, a lot of them were stay at home defensemen. You take a look at Rasmus Sandin, he gets involved and is a part of the Capitals. And it's assuring for me, if you take a look at it, sometimes when you look at a team and they're not living up to expectation, and you think to yourself, when are they going to be good again? Are they going to be even any good next year or the year after, or are they going to toil year after year after year? So a big piece that was taken care of, I think that Brian McClellan is busy addressing position of need. I think that, that he's not done making moves. I expect to have more deals done between now and Friday, but it's going to be interesting. The players that are in flux, we're talking Nick Dowd, we're talking, Max Pacioretty, Joel Edmondson, those kind of players. So for them to even take care of something that is a player that already plays on the team, just locking him up for the long term is a good thing for Capitals fans, and you should be very excited about what that means for the future. All right, so coming up here after the break, we will talk about Evgeny Kuznetsov. We know his story, that he was waived, cleared, and sent to Hershey, but what is the likelihood that he even plays a single game for Hershey, or will he be dealt at the deadline? I'll discuss coming up. No matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you've got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed. If you're hiring, you need Indeed, because Indeed is the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't pay. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites hoping to find candidates with the right skills, you need one powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. So whether you are involved in HR or you're just doing the hiring at your job, make your life easier. It's 2024. You don't need to be dealing with paper applications and the frustration. You need Indeed. Start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked on. Offer valid through March 31st. Go to Indeed.com/locked on to claim your $75 credit before March 31st. Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire. You need Indeed. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So there is a lot of rumblings going on around Evgeny Kuznetsov and what the future is for him within the Capitals organization as a whole. There was photos released by the Hershey Bears today showing them getting on a bus, and you saw him with a pillow and a blanket getting on the bus. And it is definitely going to be a change of pace for Evgeny Kuznetsov. He is used to the NHL life, which entails flying around on chartered jets and staying in top tier hotels. It is going to be a step down for him, but according to the photos, he has a big smile across his face, and it seems like he is making the most of his opportunities. He is an interesting guy that many people thought that he wouldn't go down to Hershey in the first place, that there was rumblings that he thought he was better than all of that. But I think when he starts looking at the money that's involved, not only that, but his reputation, I think he wants to keep everything on the up and up. So if in fact it does not work in the Capitals organization as a whole, and when I say as a whole, I'm talking about the Capitals, the Hershey Bears, that kind of thing, that he has a future elsewhere. And I think that at the end of the day, he's doing a bit of damage control, to hope that he has a viable future. So with the trade deadline looming, I've been left asking the question, will the Capitals trade Kuznetsov, and what would it take to orchestrate a move like that? Many people have said that if a trade for Evgeny Kuznetsov was going to happen, it most likely would have happened already. First, I think it's important to remember what kind of player Kuzy once was. I think you could say the Caps would not have won the Stanley Cup had Kuznetsov been in the fold. And I'm not saying that in hyperbole. He had one of his best seasons as a Capital during the 2018 Stanley Cup run, and he played a huge role on this team. In his heyday, he was a point per game player and had the ability to change the outcome of games with his play alone. It's a complete about face to how his play has been this season. He has 17 points in 43 games and an astronomical $7.8 million cap hit. So that's where it gets complicated because he has a year left on his deal. He is getting paid a ton of money. And who is going to be willing to take a flyer on a guy that's been in the player's assistance program 2 different times for whatever reason, whether it be personal or whatever? We know what's behind all of it. And also his inconsistent play. It would be a gamble to be sure. But there are teams, make no mistake about it, that have shown interest. Again, if you are an everydayer of the show, you know how I spoke about last summer that the Nashville Predators were all in because Barry Trotz knew what kind of player Evgeny Kuznetsov is intrinsically. He knows that in his inner being that he is one heck of a hockey player. You just got to get in between his ears and figure out what makes him tick, take the face off the clock and look at the gears and see what kind of player Kuzy is. And Barry Trotz was able to do that, but it wasn't to be. Is there going to be another team willing to take a chance on Kuzy? It's an encouraging sign to see him show up in Hershey, but you cannot live on former glory. So what do the premier insiders think of the prospect getting dealt at the deadline? According to the Athletics' Pierre LeBrun, obviously Kuznetsov is a totally different kettle of fish, not a rental, in a very true unique situation after coming out of the NHL's player assistance program, clearing waivers earlier this week. And reporting to Hershey, I was told Tuesday that Kuzy is motivated to show people around the game he's on the way back and can still be an elite player, the insider asserted. That's just what I talked about as well. And I think that it is going to be must-see TV if you can see Kuznetsov playing in a game for the Bears. You can see it on AHL TV or, watch them play whatever game you can make it to. But in his time playing for the Bears, if you can catch that, I think that that is going to be some hockey worth watching. So he's approaching his AHL assignment with the right attitude. Could he move before Friday's deadline? It would require a team wanting to take a chance and the Capitals wanting to take back some of the money, potentially. You could do a salary retention. Given that Kuznetsov is signed next season at $7.8 million, as of Tuesday, there are still at least some hope that could happen, but it feels like a long shot before Friday. Again, it could happen. Do I see it happening? Now, listen, I'm just going to be totally candid with you. And if you watch this show, he's a hard guy to gauge. I mean, I've had a tremendous difficult time trying to figure out what he's going to do because he does not act in a predictable way. Just based on his character and what we've seen on the ice and off the ice with him on the Capitals, he seemed angry. He seemed agitated this season on the Capitals. And I thought that this was going to be his year because they had a different head coach. I thought that, Peter Laviolette and Evgeny Kuznetsov, it was a round peg in a square hole. It just did not fit. So I thought, given the fact that Carberry has a bit of rapport, he's a younger coach, so he's more affable and personable with these younger players, that I thought that it would work. And I don't even know necessarily if it has anything to do with Spencer Carberry or his assistants this year. I just think that he is struggling. I think that he is struggling to an extent the same way that Anthony Mantha struggled previously. I think he's struggling in the same way that Alex Ovechkin did to start the season. And I think that once he gets off the schneid and starts scoring goals, look out. I mean, I don't think that anyone can write him off as being washed up. I still think that if you think that if any Kuznetsov does not have what it takes, I would look out, because I ultimately do think he will prove you wrong. I think that he is still one heck of a hockey player, regardless of if he has a future in Washington or not. He is going to do a really great job. First of all, in Hershey, I think he'll probably get in at least a couple games down there, if not more, maybe finish out the season there. And then, wherever that might lead. Is there going to be a buyout this summer? Is his contract going to get terminated? Will he go to the KHL? Regardless of where he lands, I still think that he is still one heck of a hockey player, and whatever team gets him, if he can be invested, if he can be that great player that he said he can be, if he wants to be, if he chooses to be, I still think that he has it within him to be a great player, whether it's in the district or not. All right, so coming up here after the break, we will talk about how changes are going on because Anthony Mantha was dealt out to Vegas. So that is ultimately going to shake things up. We know that there is a hole where Anthony Mantha played. Who is going to get the first crack at filling those big shoes? I'll discuss coming up. Eating better is easy with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, and ready to go in just 2 minutes. You'll have over 35 different options to choose from every week, including Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Also, there are more than 60 add-ons to help you stay fueled up and feeling good all day. What are you waiting for? Get started today and get after your goals. 2-minute meals, fuel up fast with Factor's restaurant quality meals that are ready to eat and heat wherever you are. Pancakes, smoothies, and more. Discover a wide variety of easy options for the entire day, like breakfast, midday bites, and more. No prep, no mess. Factor meals are ready to heat and eat, so there's no prepping, cooking, or cleaning up. Flexible for your schedule. Get as much as you'd like and done, and get it done each and every week without having to worry about what kind of meal you're going to prepare. Factor is the perfect solution if you're looking for fast, premium options with no cooking required. Head to factormeals.com/locked on NHL50 and use code locked on NHL50 to get 50% off. That's code locked on NHL50 at factormeals.com/locked on NHL50 to get 50% off. Do you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, a no cap on a 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claims as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So there is going to be changes in the Capitals lines because, well, changes are necessary. Anthony Mantha scored 20 goals for the Capitals this season, and he's out of town playing in Sin City. So that does leave a vacancy in a position that Ivan Miroshnichenko is going to get the first crack at. With Anthony Mantha moving on to Sin City, it would only stand to reason that the Capitals lines will get shook up a bit. Enter Ivan Miroshnichenko. He was playing on the left wing on the third line today at practice with Dylan Strome and Sonny Milano. And that's at practice, subject to change. I get that, but that is how it's penciled in. Big shoes to fill as Anthony Mantha scored 20 goals this season. Quite the about face for a guy in a contract year who's surprised, not this guy, found a way to play some really great hockey when it meant the most. This is truly Miro's time to shine and prove that he is deserving of a longer look on this team. Listen, he has taken some time getting acclimated to the North American game. Can he make the most of this opportunity, or will this opportunity get squandered and it will be the perception that he is not quite yet NHL ready? This will be Miro's fifth NHL game, and the big lights never shine as bright as they do when the Capitals take on their bitter rival, the Pittsburgh Penguins. What a time to show what you have in the tank. And you're like, that's a lot of pressure for a guy in one game. Listen, that's what a lot of guys do. Hendrik Lapierre's done it. Connor McMichael, Alexei Protas, Joe Snively in previous years, they've made the most of their opportunities when they've been called up. So I don't think that it's impossible for him to really shine. The hard part is that he's dried up a bit when he was playing down in Hershey. The big reason that he got called up is, well, familiarity with the team. When asked Spencer Carbier about how Miro is better equipped on this go-round in the NHL, you would hope that he's better equipped for this situation. He's a very young player, still learning our system, the language playing over here in a visiting building. We just want him to be able to show building blocks and show improvement as he plays more at an NHL level. And I'm excited about the potential of what could be. I guess, I had him pegged at doing bigger things this season, just considering how great he played in the preseason, considering how he was fast-tracked from the draft to playing on the Capitals when he had a lot of obstacles in his way. Listen, he could still have been a year or two out. He still is far ahead of where many people had him projected, but he does not have a lock on Anthony Mantha's position. There are going to be other players vying for his role. So Miro isn't guaranteed. Mantha's job, he simply just gets the first crack at it. Matthew Phillips, you remember Matthew Phillips? Oh, yes, in fact, I do. Also figures to be in the mix, depending on how the Capitals are at the deadline. We'll see how it shakes out, Carberry says. I'm not sure that I'm going to say that it's going to be one player or the other. I think it will be a shared responsibility, whether that's Miro who gets another opportunity to play right away, call it 12 to 13 minutes. It's time to shine, show what you have, be ready for your opportunity, and seize it. But the difficult thing is the further we get past the trade deadline on March 8th. We're not there yet, but it gets a little bit more sticky. It gets a little bit more complicated. It gets complicated after the deadline on who you can call up from Hershey. So it's not just we're going to pull you up and send you down and pull you up and send you down. No, you got to start making a little bit more better decisions. After March 8th, the Caps are only allowed 4 call-ups other than for emergencies. Carberry was careful not to name who he thinks will get called up. I can't tell you exactly who's going to fill the role, but there will be an opportunity to go around, whether that's the guys that have been here all year long or some guys like Miro. So it's going to be, interesting, and it gets a bit more complex because we think we know who's going to get dealt at the deadline. I think it's a common thought to think that Nick Dowd will get dealt at the deadline, and the huge vacancy, the huge void that would leave. I mean, make no mistake, players like Nick Dowd do not grow on trees. Who is going to fill his huge shoes on the fourth line? But fourth line doesn't really, exemplify or explain what kind of player he is. That is just where he's played the best. And it's interesting You take a look at the players that are rumored to being on the move. Well, listen, we heard Beck Malenstein potentially could be on the move. We heard Nicholas Abe-Kubel could be on the move. So that fourth line could have a total facelift, potentially. We don't know. It's still a little bit too early to know, but that line that has killed it for the Capitals this year could look a whole lot different after Friday. Capitals fans, this team is going to face some changes, and they're going to face it in a hurry. It's just all going to depend on what kind of offer Brian McClellan gets, what kind of return we're going to get. Again, I want you to tamper expectations. We are not going to get that big, sexy name that, a lot of the other teams are getting. We're not getting Noah Hannafin. We're not getting Tarasenko. We're not getting Chikrin. We're not getting those names because the Capitals are not in that position. We are not in the position, the Capitals, that they're making a push for the playoffs, or not to that extent. You take a look at Edmonton and all the moves that are, taking place there. You take a look at the Golden Knights. Those are the teams that are in the thick of it. And then there's teams, outliers like the New Jersey Devils, who still think they're in it, even though they're probably not in it unless they land that big name goalie. Now, as I record this at 9:35 Central, maybe something happened within the last 30 minutes. And the Devils did get that goalie. But before I started recording that was their big bugaboo. You take a look at the Carolina Hurricanes, which if Jake Gensel goes to the Carolina Hurricanes, again, as I record this, that did not take place, that could be a game changer for the Hurricanes. So there are a lot of teams, and the fans of said teams, it's pretty exciting to be a Golden Knights a fan right now, to be an Edmonton fan, to be a Carolina fan, to be a fill in the blank. It's got to be pretty exciting. As Capitals fans, we have to be resigned to the fact that this is probably not going to be their season, even though they are not mathematically eliminated yet. It's about the future, that the Capitals will miss the playoffs for 2 years in a row. And this also does not mean that Spencer Carberry is going to be without a job. Lord knows that would be foolhardy. But, you take a look. Yeah, I mean, I guess stranger things have happened, but I would be most surprised. All the vibes I get around the Capitals organization is that they are pleased with what Spencer Carberry's doing, considering the situation. You take a look at the Devils, they fired their coach, but was it the coach? No, I mean, it's a player thing. And to a certain extent, you take a look at GMs and they're trying to save their own butt. I mean, I think to a certain extent, let's widen the lens here around the NHL a little bit. Take a look at the Devils, for example. I think that the GM of the Devils knew that his butt was on the line. So he's like, I'm going to do something. I am going to fire the head coach so I can report to ownership. There, I did something. I fired the head coach. And to that, I would say, are you any better right now? So that's the interesting position that we see around the NHL, is that, kind of just facing reality with what the Capitals are right now, in a rebuild mode, sort of, not officially official, but kind of trending in that direction. So I think that things could change in a hurry. We could get draft picks that could then get flipped for NHL talent. Think Sandin last season, maybe a forward, maybe a center. Wouldn't that be a home run for the Capitals? That is my hope. That is my prayer for this Capitals team as we edge ever more closely to Friday and the trade deadline. And I hope that you are along for the ride. Make sure and follow or subscribe Locked On Caps on Twitter, X if you will, or make sure that on YouTube you hit that follow or subscribe button. We are currently at 970 subscribers. Can we get it all the way up to 1,000? I'm not going to say it's going to happen between now and Friday, but that would be quite a milestone for this show, as I started out with 75. So it would be a big thing. And just to stay in the know, but also help the channel grow, I would sure appreciate it. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals. And when you are done here, head on over to Locked On's 24/7 streaming channel. Find a Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. And listen, I want to thank you for joining me each and every day. Let's thank you for everyone that listens on the audio side, that watches this on YouTube. You are ultimately what makes this show successful. Listen, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.